Okay, welcome everybody. We have an interesting topic. This is Martin Pea Lanslu, part of the Ask the Building webinar series. And our topic is real estate development process. Usually we talk about building and construction topics, but although this is kind of related to building and construction too, but it's more on the real estate development scenario. So this webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection LLC, which is a company that I own in Hawaii. And this is the only 5-second commercial I'm going to give for the company. Let's get right to it, the real estate development process. But before I talk about that, today is a couple of interesting national days. And national days is every day there's some kind of item or items that are celebrated. And today those days it's a National Wine and Cheese Day. And then along with that, there's once you're done with your wine and cheese, then it's National Hot Fudge Sundae Day. So up to you guys whether you want to partake in that or not. But let me give you a brief background of my experience in real estate development. I have 40 years of experience in the real estate development field, 10 years actually developing properties. And then after that, I became a real estate development consultant, and all the while doing construction management, construction engineering as part of the real estate development. So personally, I've worked on many projects: condo, high-rise, office buildings, townhouses, subdivisions, not only in Hawaii, but throughout the United States in areas that were similar to Hawaii as far as climate, such as California, Texas, and Florida. So it's from that time till now, the concepts are basically the same, but what the changes were from like 1980s, 1990s until today, you would probably guess is the cost, right? The cost of real estate, the cost of construction, labor costs, supply chain issues, cost of the materials and all that. So also governmental regulations and so forth. So basically, I could take a university textbook on real estate development that was made in 1980, and the concepts are basically the same today, except there's, minor variations. So let's go right to it. And this could be the same information that applies to if you're building one house on a vacant lot for yourself, or a real estate developing a huge 40-story condominium project, or a large shopping center, or office building, and that kind of development. So basically, the concept is exactly the same. It's just the building type and the end result may be different. So the first thing is identification of property. So the developer would go around, and depending on what type of property he would develop or he's going to develop, there's a kind of a guideline. Okay, so let's say, and for example, let's talk about a developer that's going to develop a high-rise condo building. And I know some of you are watching from different parts of the United States, even around the world, but I'm going to use my example in Honolulu, Hawaii. So we have a developer who wants to build a high-rise condominium building in Honolulu. So they do their feasibility studies, market analysis to see whether in fact there's a demand for condo units of the type that they're planning on building. And once they do that, then they can better decide what they're going to do. So in this case, they get back a feasibility study and a market analysis, and they're talking to professionals in economics, professionals in real estate, in the real estate market, real estate sales, what's going on today and what's going to happen in the real estate market within the next 12 months and in 2 years or so. Hey, what kind of saturation? Is the market saturated already with condo units, or is a demand for more condo units? As you know, there's a housing shortage, a big demand. So therefore, to the developer, it's okay to build more condos. Now, what is the price point of these condos? I mean, you can't build a luxury high rise and sell each condo for $5 million, right? Is there a market for that? Maybe, maybe not, but you're taking a chance, right? Now, if they build affordable condos, and I don't even want to get into the definition of affordability because there's numerous definitions and the government definition is way off from reality. But the fact remains that there's a definite shortage of affordable condos. Okay, so in this example, when the developer gets the information, then there's a green light. And what that means is, okay, based on professionals that we hired to do feasibility studies and the market analysis, it's a go, meaning that we're not going to build something that is not going to sell. Okay, so the green light means go. Now, remember, when a market analysis is done, if I was a developer, I'm going to say, I don't only need to know what's happening today. I need to know what the market is going to be 12 months from now or 24 months from now. And why? Why is because by the time my condo hits the market, it's going to be 12 months, 24 months from now. And if the market crashes and I'm left with a vacant building, I'm stuck. I'm going to be on the hook. How am I going to pay back my construction loan? Okay, so that's very important. Before they even pull the trigger on deciding whether to make an offer on the piece of land, the developer goes through all these studies. They may pay thousands of dollars on studies. And then if they get it back and it's a green light, then they may end up spending thousands of dollars more, hiring an architect to do some renderings, right? And maybe a schematic design of the building. And then they're going to use that schematic design and give it to several contractors to say, all right, here's the idea that we want. And I know the plans are not complete, but give us your ballpark number of what the construction cost is going to be turnkey. Turnkey meaning here's your vacant land, and we want you, Mr. General Contractor, to do whatever you need to do to build this thing and finish it off so I, as a developer, can sell it. Okay, so that's the name of the game. So let's say all the feasibility studies, market analysis, whatever studies are needed is completed. Okay, now we go to and we identified the piece of property. Okay, so we go to now, making an offer on the property, and this is part of the real estate buy and sell situation. Okay, so it's a land acquisition. All right, so the developer buys this piece of property with the idea to not sit on it as a land banker, but turn it over. So you heard of house flipping, where you go and buy an old house, fix it up, flip it, and sell it, and hopefully make more money. All right, this is sort of like house flipping, but there's no house to flip. It's land flipping, but it's not just selling the land to somebody else for a higher price. You're going to use what's called the highest and best use of that property. So if the zoning is a lesser zoning, then of course the developer wants a higher zoning, because to the developer, the higher the zoning, and as far as what you can build, the more valuable the property is. For instance, if you look at this picture, the zoning is agriculture, okay? So if the zoning was residential, it's worth more. If it was zoned business, it's worth even more, right? Because then you can build an office building or shopping center on it. Now, in some cases, the government would allow a developer, and this is what's happening in Honolulu now, where the government is trying to say there's a definite shortage of housing, so we want more development. So we're going to waive building codes, zoning codes, any kind of codes with regulations. We're going to make it easy for the developer to build because we want more housing. Okay, now there's going to be a lot of pushback on that, because then all of a sudden we had all these controls in place for years, many years. We had the building codes, we had the zoning codes, land use ordinance and all that. And now to throw all that out the window because there's a shortage of housing, that's not right. The other thing that's not right is, what has the government been doing all these years? Sitting around, with their red tape. And then all of a sudden now they kind of try to throw that out. So that's for another webinar. Continuing on this one, entitlements and improvements. Well, what is that? That means that you have a piece of property, and let's say there's no electricity, there's no utilities, there's no water, there's no sewer, there's no cable, internet. Okay, we need to know whether the developer can feasibly have those from wherever the point is, point A to point B, which is the project site, if it's even feasible to do that, and then also what the cost is, because all that comes into play. Because you can't find out after you paid money to design all the plans that now we cannot get sewer approval because the sewer is maxed out. So one of the first things the developer does is he goes to the local jurisdiction that approves sewer permits, and he says, fills out the form. Okay, it's called a sewer check. And what that is the developer is planning to build 300 units on this property. Okay, is the sewer capacity currently enough to support 300 condo units? And if the developer gets a paper back saying yes, approve, okay, then it's another green light. So the same thing with the water. Is there enough water? Is there enough electricity? What's the cost of running electricity? Of course, if you're located in the central Honolulu, where there's already utilities on site, it's easier. If you're developing a property that's miles away from the latest hub, where you have electrical, sewer and all that, it's going to cost a lot of money to dig trenches and run all the utility lines from that last point until your project site. Okay, so there's different things to consider. Also, if you're developing near the ocean, then a lot of properties in Hawaii are near the ocean because we're surrounded by water. Now we got to look at where the water table is, right? Because if you're too close to the ocean, what happens during high tide? Okay, so how far deep are you going to dig for your foundation? So that's becoming kind of a problem now too, with this rising sea level, coastal issues and all that. So it's just going to get more and more complicated as time goes on. And then, so let's say that you finish all your entitlements, approvals and all that, and you're in a good place as far as a developer. Now they know what can be built. So based on the schematic design plan, now we go through design development and different stages of the architectural team. So the architectural team consists of the project architect and then various engineers that are on the design team. Engineers that would be considered and would have to work on such a project would be soils engineer, which is a geotechnical engineer. That's another term. They deal with soils and ground and all that. There's a civil engineer that is designing drainage conditions and so forth. And that engineer works closely hand in hand with the geotechnical engineer. And then you have your structure engineer, and your project architect gives the engineers the basic layout. So the structural engineer uses the basic layout to design the structural plans, and then you have other support engineers such as mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and so forth. So there could be a team of maybe 10 or 12 other engineers or consultants that are involved in the complete building plans. Now, as the buildings get more and more complicated, such as a 40-story luxury high-rise in Honolulu, okay, say the Kaka'ako area. So not only you have your engineers that I mentioned, you bring in acoustical engineers, which have to do with noise and sound, right? You bring in maybe a window curtain wall engineer that has to do with designing windows, because if you're building a high-rise building, you want to maximize the views. So the idea is you want to get as much window space as you can, much view plane space, and not have it covered up with walls. So it's a toss-up between how do we build this building with less concrete and more windows so that we can take advantage of the views, because that's what people are buying. They're buying views, right? No one wants to see another building. They want to see either mountain or nice ocean, that kind of environment. Okay, so the building plans are being worked on, and this may take on a high-rise building 12 to 24 months to complete the building plans. And in addition to the plans, there's the specification. So the building plans tell you what to build. The specs tell you how to build it. For instance, the building plan would say, we have a flat roof here. Okay, the plan will show the flat roof of a building. The specifications would say what kind of roofing system, what the brand name for the roofing products are used, and not only for the actual roofing system, but everything else to do with the roofing system, such as building flashing, the parapet walls, how to address that, any kind of roof penetration, such as plumbing vents or air conditioning, that kind of thing. So the combination of the building plans and the specs would give the contractor enough information to build this building. Okay, now, of course, not all plans and specs are complete. So during the course of construction, or maybe prior to the actual construction, the contractor or subcontractor may have questions, right? And the questions that are posed are called an RFP, RFI, request for information. And the request for information goes to the project architect. Okay, and some of the questions would be, hey, you know what, on these building plans, it doesn't specifically say what kind of door to use for the stairwell in section so-and-so. And then they would have to do the research and say, yeah, we left that part out, but what kind of doors are you planning to use? Or the architect might say, these are the kind of doors that are specified, although it wasn't specifically stated in the project documents that you got. So it could go back and forth throughout the whole construction time period. Okay, so let's say the building plans are and specs are done, contractors are bidding on it, the developer selects a contractor, and then you start construction. So I'm kind of, for the sake of discussion, I'm speeding this whole process up, okay, as far as real estate development. So we finish with all the back end design stuff, okay? We sped up to the point of the developer selecting a contractor. So it's XYZ general contractor, and of course he has all the subcontractors. He may have 20 different subcontractors. Okay, so the construction starts. You bring in a tower crane, and you start construction. Basically, that's what happens in actual construction. Of course, if you're building, one house, you don't need a tower crane unless it's a huge house on a mountain. But for the most part, if you drive around any city and you see tower cranes, what does that tell you? That tells you there's a construction project going on. You don't really know what type until you get there to take a closer look. It could be an industrial building, office building, residential, could be an apartment building or shopping center maybe. There's all types, right, of construction and building. So construction progress may take 12, 18, 24 months or even longer, depends on the type of construction. If you're going around town and you see these high-rise buildings and you kind of keep an eye on it, right? You go and pass by the same building a couple months later, guess what? There may be, 4 more stories added to the building. Okay, so good idea would be to check it out if you're interested and watch the building go up. And then pretty soon you're gonna see the roof of the building, right? That means they hit the roof and it's like topping off. And next thing you know, the tower crane's gone. What does that mean? That means the whole building is basically completed. To a degree, they don't need the tower crane anymore. Okay, so what happens after construction? The building is finished, right? So final acceptance and occupancy. So this is the end. This is where the developer is basically the point where they want to be, right? What happens is they're always talking to the contractor saying, how can we speed this up? Because the sooner you finish, the sooner I can start getting my money. Okay, and what does that mean? If you're building a shopping center, the sooner the shopping center is finished, the sooner the developer can start renting out to tenants and having the tenants build out their spaces and start collecting lease rent. If it's a condo building, the sooner the condos can sell, right? And the developer gets their sales money. If it's a rental, the sooner the developer or owner or investor can start collecting rents because, the tenants can start moving in. So this is where a good point is for the real estate developer. Okay, the better point is after this period is completed, and if it's a condo, the sales are happening, and there's many buildings who are actually have units sold and people moving in before the whole building's built, because that's better for the developer. Once they close escrow, they're getting their cash, right? So they need to pay off their construction loan first. So basically, in a nutshell, this is the whole real estate development process from the beginning until the end. And it continues on to this day, depends on what kind of building is being built by the developer. Now, what else do I have? That's it. So conclusion, my idea would be, as you drive around, take a look at these buildings and how it's being built. And if you're interested in keeping up with what's going on, right, stay tuned, because there's real estate developers or other people who want to build on land that they shouldn't be building on. Okay. And it might get political, it might get into a different situation. For example, on the island of Kauai, there's the cocoa palms, right? And the local residents don't want any building. I mean, there's a difference between the not in my backyard people who are against any kind of development versus a reason why they're against the project. Okay, and it could be because that used to be Hawaiian royalty land, and somehow it got taken away, and they don't want a hotel there, right? I personally, I don't want a hotel there, but this webinar is not about what I think about that particular issue. That may be fodder for another webinar, but we'll see. Okay, so moving on, what you missed on previous webinars, we've given a whole bunch of webinars on different kind of topics: roofing, concrete spalling, cast iron drain piping, painting, electrical, and it's all available on our website. And I'll give you the website information in a little while. And then other webinars coming up. Last webinar we did Aloha Stadium from rust to dust. And then what's coming up for future webinars is water damage, flood remediation, next construction defect litigation cases, and then renovation is no vacation. That applies to renovating your own house or condo. I'm going to talk about how to hire a good contractor. Maybe I'll tell you how to not hire a bad contractor too. Real estate seller disclosure. I'm kind of shifting from building and construction topics to this one is real estate seller disclosure. If you're buying or selling, this is going to be very important. Then international residential code, cliff dwelling construction. Here's a hot topic: the rail, the big, bad, and the ugly. And then after that, Red Hill, the big Navy blunder. And then after that is why hire a construction manager. If you're on a condo board, you're a property manager and you manage condo buildings, why would you hire a construction manager? If you're building a house, okay, why would you hire a construction manager? I'm going to be letting you know why, and I'm going to be giving you war stories about what happened to people, right, and condo boards when they did not hire a professional to monitor the project, and things went south, right? It went southeast, southwest, and some of them still haven't been resolved. So let's see. Okay, as I promised, visit our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. Let me tell you, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but this website is huge. We spend time every day putting information on this website, from webinars that we've done, video replays that you can watch. We also have free books, free PowerPoints, takeaways. There's a lot of good stuff. So I would urge you to, take a visit. There's enough videos for you to stream, and probably if you dedicated like 1 week straight to watch all the videos, you probably still wouldn't finish them all. You're going to need like popcorn, refreshments, cold drinks, and all that. So anyway, please go to our website. You got questions, I got answers. If you have questions specific to this webinar, I'm game here to answer. If you have off topics, you may want to ask those also. If I have time, I'll respond to those. So it's kind of wide open now. So my phone number, 808-422-2132. If you want to call, and then email lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. By the way, we're not only broadcasting this live on Facebook, we're also broadcasting it simultaneously on LinkedIn. And we're going to add more social media platforms in the future. So I'm beginning to create like our own mini CBS or CNN or whatever. So I have a partner, Martin Pea, who took a nap, but I need to wake him up to see if anybody has questions regarding this particular webinar. So Martin, are you around?
Yes, Lance, I am. Can you hear okay?
Yeah, you're good. So we have anybody that asks questions on our Zoom platform using chat or Q&A, or maybe commented on Facebook or have a question, or LinkedIn. I don't know. I'm not looking at any of those, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, we've had a few questions that have come in, so let me share them with you. The first one we have here is what are some of the key factors to consider when selecting a site for real estate development?
Oh, that's a kind of loaded question. It depends on like what the end product is going to be. Okay, whether it's a single family house or whether it's a high-rise condo or shopping center. So the factors would be, like I mentioned, feasibility studies, and you really want to look at the market value of the property, because if they're asking too much for it, you may be overpaying. Plus that, it's wise to check the zoning and what can be built. For instance, if it's a 5,000 square foot lot, you cannot build a high-rise condo building or apartment building on that lot. So the size of the lot and the zoning have a lot to do with what can be built. But right now, there's actually a huge transformation because of the shortage of affordable housing. So we've yet to see how it's going to play out. But basically, there's certain things in place set by the government to allow developers to build a lot of stuff claiming it's for affordable housing or low income housing or senior housing or whatever the term is. So there's one very important law that's 201H, and a lot of developers are using that to build a lot of big buildings, like even exceeding the current zoning by 200 feet. And I researched all that, and legally it's possible based on what the law reads. So it's interesting. You got to do your homework, and you gotta hire experts, so that when you gather all the information, you're really making the right choice, because you're not going to spend all this money and find out you can't build what you thought you could build. It's not, Hawaii has a lot of red tape, and it's very strict. When I was doing real estate development in the 80s, and we went to Texas and Florida to buy property, I was surprised at the lack of zoning regulations, especially like in Orlando, very close to Disney World. We could have taken 100 acres of Orange Grove property, which is, I don't know what the zoning was, I kind of forgot, but we could have built condo buildings on that same property, because the zoning was all very loose at the time. We could have built condo buildings, houses, shopping centers, strip mall, all that. And the current zoning allowed us at the time to do that. Whereas in Hawaii, it takes 2 years to get a building permit. That was like totally ridiculous. And for a big developer to go into Orlando or Jacksonville or St. Petersburg, Florida, and to say that, we're here to build something big for you. When I met with the local government officials, they laid out the red carpet because they wanted money coming into their city, right? They wanted a big development project. They wanted a real estate developer to come in and spend big money, because that'll only improve their city, right? So we had one project in in Jacksonville, Florida. And when I went to meet with the city planners and all that, they basically told me, Mr. Luke, we like your idea. We saw your renderings. We fully support what you're planning to do. What do you need from us? And I'm like, I was surprised to hear that. I don't hear that back in Honolulu, right? So anyway, the idea was that we're going to spend a lot of money widening the roads and all the sidewalk area. We're going to use this red brick, and it was going to be like super nice. And they were even willing to spend some of the money for that to participate in a little joint venture, because it was basically taking a whole city block. And there's a difference, right, between regulations in Honolulu, Hawaii versus regulations in different parts of the country. So anyway, I think I got off track a bit, but let's see what other questions we have.
Well, Lance, I was just gonna say, based on what you're saying, it seems like Hawaii is now doing what Orlando was doing years ago, yeah, trying to accommodate the developers, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, but you know, it's kind of a mess because it's hard once you have all the restricted building codes and zoning codes in place. It's hard to all of a sudden go back and now say, you know what, developers, you don't have to follow any of that because we need affordable housing. So go build whatever you want, and basically we'll rubber stamp it. I don't think so. I mean, after so many developers were regulated, and not even developers, homeowners who are waiting 2 years to get building permits, and it might not be for affordable housing. It might be for themselves, right? Maybe their house got flooded, and to wait 2 years to get a building permit, that's like ridiculous. The other thing is that multi-generational housing, right? We're going to renovate our house. We're going to have our parents live there. So now you got 2 generations because we're caretakers, or our kids can't afford to buy their own house. So guess what? We're going to expand our house, and now we have 3 generations. My parents, my wife's parents, maybe one or the other, our family, and then my kids too, right? And then to wait like years to get a permit for that, I don't think that's right. So there's a revamp of the system, but it's like still too slow. But enough of that. Got any other questions or comments?
Yeah, we've got a couple others here. Let me see. The next one that maybe you just answered it a bit, but this is how do zoning regulations impact the real estate development process, and what strategies can developers use to navigate these regulations successfully? And probably government is helping with that now.
Well, who's asking the question? Are they real estate developers or attorneys?
It doesn't really say. I don't see
Actually, it doesn't matter. I'm open. So the regulations is just more red tape. Okay, so but it needs to be followed. The building codes are there for a reason, right? For safety, right? And guess what? If you don't know, building codes are minimum standards. They're not medium standards or maximum standards. It's just basic minimum standards. So if the building code is not followed, and that's minimum standards, we have a problem here, right? And that's the reason why the building code has a strict building permit requirement and procedure, right? So you might think, it's a bunch of BS, all this rigmarole we got to follow and all that. There's a reason for that. Okay, now, as long as the minimum building codes are being followed, that's fine. What about the zoning codes, right? It's minimum also. But I'll give you one good example: monster houses. Okay, so are these developers following the building code, zoning code? No, they're not. And I'm not saying all monster house developers. I'm saying a lot of them. Okay, I even wrote a book about monster houses. You want to learn about monster houses? Go get my book. It's free. Or if you want to pay $14.95, you could buy it on Amazon. It's for sale on Amazon. But the book, I spent thousands of dollars writing the book. Why? Because I had to hire researchers. So in the book, there's actually copies of notice of violations from DPP to the homeowner. You want to see that? That's all inside information that you can get free. I did all the legwork for you. You know, knock yourself out reading it. It's pretty interesting. I gotta admit that it's interesting for me to read all that stuff, because when you hear these monster house developers saying, no, we follow the building code, we follow this, it's those neighbors, they don't like us, right? I think they're prejudiced because we're Chinese and they don't like us. No, that's not. The fact of the matter is, hello, you have to follow the building zoning codes. Don't go big this monstrosity with 19 bathrooms and clog up our parking in our streets. This is our neighborhood. Come on. Okay. But anyway, I feel like I'm on talk radio, but this is our webinar. So yes, in answer to the question, you got to follow the zoning and building codes, and then be other codes too that you need to follow. But at least do your part in following that. There may be give or take with DPP, but you know, hire an expert if you need to.
Very good,
What else you
man.
got?
Next item is, what are some of the most common challenges that arise during the design and construction phase of real estate development? And how can these challenges be addressed effectively?
Okay, so let me break it up. The challenge, number one challenge is on the design stage. Okay, so when you're going in for the building permit review with DPP, that's already a challenge, because you have your plans divided up between architectural, mechanical, structural, electrical, and every section is reviewed accordingly and flagged if there's errors. Okay, so that's already a process that you have to go through. So if your architect and the design consultants are professionals, there shouldn't be too many mistakes, right? And then it makes the whole building permit application go through a lot faster. Okay, on the construction side, to take those plans that were drawn and actually build, the contractor can only do the job that they know how to do, and their job is to build according to what the plans say. A lot of times it doesn't work what the plan shows, because actually in the field on the job site, it's like the plan shows this, but I can't fit this beam into this other wall here. It just doesn't work. It may have worked on the plans, but it doesn't work on site. So that's where the contractor has to send a notice to the developer and architect saying, I need information on this, or you know what, can you come down to the job site and take a look at this and do a sketch for me on how we're, you know, how to make this thing work. So there could be thousands of questions that the contractor or the subcontractors have on any given project. Okay, of course, on large scale, big projects, shopping centers and 40-story high-rise, there's always going to be questions. Even on building one house, there could be 50 to 100 questions during the course of construction. Sometimes the contractor doesn't even ask the owner. They just do it, right? Thinking that they know what's best. And then later on, the owner comes back and says, what happened here? The window's too low. You know, I told you guys that, and I reviewed the plan showing the height of the window because I want to see out. You know, when I'm in my kitchen and I look out the window, I want to be able to see the ocean. Now the way you have it, it restricts the view, and the contractor says, oh, well, we couldn't do it because the beam was in the way, so we had to lower the window. But the contractor didn't contact the owner and say, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, we can't put the window how you thought it was going to be because of this beam here. They didn't even say anything. They waited until the end, and the owner doesn't come to look at the house. It's under construction that often. And then when the owner shows up months later, right? And then they call me saying, oh, you know what? I don't think the contractor's like following the plans. Can you look at the plans and tell us what? And then I look at the plan and say, yeah, they didn't build it according to what the plan shows, but then they said that they couldn't because the beam was in the way. Okay, well, what do you do then, right? So the contractor should have stopped the work because they knew that this window was very important. Now, if the window was in the back of the house facing the wall, couldn't see anything, maybe no big deal, right? So anyway, it could lead to problems. So I always say communication is the key, right? You got to have open communication. Don't just feel that you're going to just do it because you're the contractor, you know what's better, right? So anyway, hopefully I answered that question. We got any others?
Yes, Lance, I have one more here that's come in, and it's about developers. How do developers ensure that their projects are profitable and sustainable over the long term? And what role do market trends and economic conditions play in the process?
Interesting question. You know what? There's never, as a real estate developer, there's always risks, right? And there's huge risks. The developer doesn't know what's going to happen. So what if there's the developer spending millions and millions of dollars building this high-rise building? Then all of a sudden, the United States and Hawaii enters into a huge recession, right? There's another pandemic or something. What happens, right? They got to spend money to keep building, or they just tell the contractor, hold off. But their plan to pay off their construction loan, it's not going to happen. So the lender's knocking on their door, Mr. Developer, you owe us $20 million and you haven't paid anything back yet. Now what do you plan to do? So in this case, it's like a perfect storm, and it's bad. We've been through so many crashes, right? Real estate, economy, and all that. There's no guarantee, but right now it looks good because there's the demand for housing. And because we're in Hawaii, a lot of people from all over the world want to come and live in Hawaii, or they want to buy property and invest, right? In the past, you had Europeans, Japanese, and they're just buying up property left and right, pricing the locals out of the market. And a lot of property that the Japanese bought are expensive luxury high-rise condos. They don't even live there. They just, when they're on vacation, they come to Hawaii, and that's where they stay instead of renting a hotel, right? Same way with Europeans. Some of them, a lot of people from California and ended up moving here, during and right after the pandemic. They said, forget it. I can work online. Why do I have to live in San Francisco or the Bay Area or whatever? It's too congested. The city is going downhill. I'm going to sell my house, for $2 million. Then I'll have cash, and then I'll just go buy a house in Hawaii, for 1.5 million or 2 million. And there you go, right? So that's a cycle we're in. There's never guaranteed, but as a real estate developer, you have to take a risk. If you want to be a real estate developer, you gotta be in that risk category, willing to take a risk. It's almost like gambling to me. If you're a risk taker and you go to Vegas and you play poker, craps, or slot machine, you're taking a risk. You got to be able to lose the money, right? That's the risk you take. So basically, that's the name of the game. Real estate development is not easy. I can tell you that. There's all these factors, and even when you think that you're doing the right thing and you try to do everything possible. You can't control the economy, you can't control people, and condos are the worst product to build for a real estate developer. Why? Well, they're the best as far as the money, right? If they sell out, but there's always you're not dealing with one owner, you're dealing with 200, 300 owners in a condo. So you're basically having to deal with the condo association, right? So, and every building that's built has problems with construction defects or other issues that homeowners may face. So that's a whole different subject, condo boards and new condo conflicts and all that. So what else we got? Did we answer everyone's questions?
Yes, we did, Lance, so you did a good job. I'm more aware of the development process. Like you say, you kind of go through it with, as a homeowner, but, definitely not as complicated or as costly as those big projects you talk about.
Oh, good. Something interesting is that 20 years ago, I gave some seminars to realtors about the real estate development process, and basically it's the same thing, except it's getting more and more complicated as time goes on.
Mm.
So we like to invite you guys to the next webinar, and thank you for tuning in. I don't know what happened to Martin's video, but I only
Oh.
see myself. But anyway, yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully oh, there you go. Where you been hiding?
I'm trying to keep up with what's happening on our, in the back office here.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we'll sign off. Thank you very much for attending. If you didn't watch the live feed, there's going to be a replay on LinkedIn and Facebook. Well, I guess on Facebook, it's just the video stays on. I don't know for how long, but you can watch that. I'm not sure about LinkedIn. But anyway, thank you very much for attending. We always enjoy our wide audience, and it's good to see people from all over the US. And when we look at the emails of attendees, and we know they're from different countries, that's also good too. So we'll sign off and see you at the next webinar. Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Hey, Martin, can you sign us out?